It's just something that's just like it's just rank. It's not how it's meant to be eaten.
Fussy eaters.
I'm not a fussy eater though.
Oh no, you don't sound it.
I'm not at all. I'm not. Take me anywhere, I'll eat anything.
You won't.
As long as it's on my terms.
You don't like the idea of having a protein shake?
If it's warm, who does? Stinks, horrible. A room temperature milk, yum.
Oh, quick cut. Air conditioning units.
Tom!
You turn them on, mate.
Why has he got the best? Why have you got the best camera on you vain sod?
Well, that's the best one.
Oh, is it?
That's why it's on you.
Oh, that's better.
When we made your...
No, I shouldn't.
Have you ever thought about getting a professional production company to come in and do this show?
Ah. All right, that's all right. We'll call it there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we made that video when you turned 5,
Yeah.
you've almost got a little bit of a reference to be able to like work back against and some of the stuff we spoke about then.
Yeah.
That was almost 2 years ago, were it? Or almost 3 years ago now.
No, we'd have filmed that 2 years ago, weren't we?
Yeah.
It wasn't last year, it was the year before.
Yeah. Bit less effort today. No walking,
No, have to walk.
no staging where the camera goes to have to then walk past it.
And no dog walkers walking through
No
the
dog
scene.
walkers, yeah. But what's new since then for you as a business? Like,
In terms of what's majorly changed, or what's new in terms of things that I've not expected?
I just guess everything, like in terms of products, business as a whole. Like, for example, I know you've brought a share scheme in.
Yeah.
That in something that you're building and delivering to clients, but there have been changes, haven't there, since we last spoke?
Yeah, I think the last 12, 18 months, we'd only just moved into that new building at that point, I think, if I remember right, because we were walking up and down the road to it, weren't we?
Yeah.
We knew, or I knew, that when we'd moved into that element, into that building, that's a massive step for us. It was a massive step for us as a business because we'd gone to quadrupled the capacity of the production, and we needed to consolidate that move and just make sure that we had that stable footing before we kind of looked at anything else. I mean, you don't stop bubbling ideas or potential projects in the background, but you don't want to do a big move like that and then also cascade that by more and by more and by more and by more and by more, because eventually the hamster wheel will just go too quick for you to keep up with. So in that period of the last, say, 18 months, we've got new products that are coming out. We've got new members of staff. We've got Jason. We've got another new sales member. And we're kind of refining what we're doing in terms of our vehicle production on the shop floor and on the workshop floor to make sure that we're cost effective. Because we're taking on massive overheads. Obviously, we're moving into a new building, so we brought in a couple of a unique software program for the business that kind of incorporates our hire, our manufacturing, and our CRM and our customer kind of servicing packages and stuff like that we do in our warranty systems. That's been really what's happened in the last 12 to 18 months, and then the market's changed a little bit in that period of time as well, which we've had to reflect in. So we've put a significant investment into our hire fleet, like over £3 million worth of stock has gone into that. Additional stock on top of what we already had. Yeah, and that's about it.
I know there's more.
What, share scheme?
Well, share scheme, but you build in house now as well, don't you? Fully in house.
Yeah, there is that little point as well. Yeah, it was those two. I brought a share scheme in so that members of staff are invested in what we do. So you're not just coming to work to earn a living and bog off at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock. It's more to the effort that you put in the effort that you put in has a financial reward, potential financial reward going forward, and then everyone feels invested in what they're doing, so they feel like they own a bit of that business. So I, Alex and Catherine relinquished 10% of our shareholdings to the staff, and then every year, we have to do it every year. We can re-invite those qualifying members of staff in. That gives them that kind of buy-in. That gives them that sense of additional ownership as well as just earning a wage. Or they're not coming to work just for I'm at the top and I'm the major shareholder of the business, but they're not just coming to work for me. They're coming to work because if they come up with an idea, they can then evaluate themselves prior to coming to me or to Alex or Kat and say, look, I think this is going to help us improve this process, which will save me an hour and a half, or will improve our product, or however that goes, because then that increases the profitability within the business, and then that increases the value of their shareholding, and their shareholdings can go up. Depending on performance and how they achieve their targets or their own individual personal targets, then we'll increase that on an annual basis. But that's one, and then the other one is building. We do everything now, bar component parts like the cushions and the light boards, although we are now building the components of the light boards ourselves. We build everything in-house. So when that chassis arrives at our workshop, we build from front to back, top to bottom. Everything is built at BTHS HQ. That gives us complete control and ownership over the quality of the product that we give to people, and the workmanship that we put in. Whereas our peers buy the chassis, the contractor, the bodybuilder to build the body, and then they might fit the lights on the back, or they might stick stickers on the back and address it, which we did. We did when we first started, because we didn't have the capability or the capacity to build. But now we do every part of that. So we buy the material in, we manufacture the material, that's not pre-formed. The guys construct the vehicle, IPVs, the 3.5 tonners, all of it. It's done. That was a major task actually in the last 18 months, and it was a significant financial and time investment to get it over the line.
Good job I remembered it then, innit?
I know, yeah.
Well, if we just take a step back then, so you've got your original premises, so now you've moved to the bigger one where you're now manufacturing in-house. Obviously there's huge risks in making that big step. At what point did you go, Dad, we've got to do this now, this is where we're moving forward?
I mean, I could give a corporate answer, but we won't. We just winged it.
Yeah.
Well, kind of winged it. Yeah. What happens to just kind of segregate us a little bit? What happens in the bodybuilding, the vehicle bodybuilding, not the pumping iron business?
Like what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. You need to teach him. They have a customer priority program. So if I'd gone to them and said, right, I want 60 3.5 ton tail lift vehicles building, but don't put any lights on it, don't put anything else on it, because we'll do that at the back end. You squeeze them for a rate, which everybody does. Along comes a larger customer who wants 400 vehicles. You get pushed to one side and they get prioritised over you. So what happens then is you we would go, right, yes, Mr. Customer, I can give you 5 3.5 ton tail lift vehicles or two IPVs. You've got a building schedule from the bodybuilder, and the bodybuilder will then, they won't tell you that they're prioritising somebody else's vehicle, so your vehicles get knocked back by 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, and you've lost control over that. And we had that quite a lot. And we were a facing company that was selling those vehicles or hiring those vehicles to customers. So we're the one that take the shit, because we're the one that are failing to live up to our promise. So we were kind of, as well as winging that idea of moving into bigger premises and then doing the manufacturing ourselves, we were kind of forced into it, because I didn't want to keep letting people down, or not letting people down, well, yeah, you are. We communicated at every stage that we knew the vehicle was going to potentially be delayed, but we had no control. So bringing that in-house and being able to control it from cradle to grave in the 360, just it was a no-brainer for us.
Yeah, it would make sense.
The financial investment is significant, and bearing in mind we were 3 years old or 4 years old then as a business, and it's a significant investment that you don't get immediate tangible return back from. You know, if we invested into our hire fleet within 6 to 8 weeks, you're going to start seeing the revenue coming back in for it. Whereas if you're investing into equipment, premises, you know, I don't know, welding gloves, it could be anything, or a new welding machine, $8,000, or a new forklift truck, 15, 20 grand. You're not going to see a tangible return from that. So it's very, when you look at it on a P&L or on a balance sheet, it's quite risky, because all that's doing is bringing your hourly overhead up and up and up and up and up. But you've got to kind of, you've got to then kind of offset that about the delays that we were having. How much is that going to increase our control over the product that we produce? You know, does that mean that we can produce more products? You know, or, you know, how can we change lane a little bit into different markets, which you guys know that we do already, and how much of that can we control, and does that offset that risk of the additional overhead cost, or the on cost to the business? And can you get a team behind you, a customer-facing team that can then start to fill up any kind of gap? I mean, within 4 weeks of moving into that premise, we already grew out of it. So we've already moved. We're not moving again, but we've bought additional premises on the same site, which we'll be moving into in 2025, because we've capacitated already.
Was that a bigger risk moving there than kind of setting up in the first place?
Yeah, because when you set a business up, it either flops or not, or is successful. But every decision that you make from the point that it's a stabilised company that has that kind of sea change in what you do, can go one or two ways. If you've miscalculated something, you're supposed to business plan things down. You know, and you're supposed to write it. You're supposed to, have this bloody 40-page document that you go to the bank with and say, "This is my business." Oh, bollocks! You might. Well, it is. It is. I had a business mentor that I got for free from a government-funded scheme in Lancashire. You've met him. I invited him onto the board. John, you need a business plan. You need a business plan. You need a business plan, but it doesn't work. Yeah, you have a vision on what you want to do and where you want to go and the things that you want to potentially change, but when you don't really have a stable day from, you come in at 9 o'clock and what you do in the afternoon is going to be completely different than what you expect it to be. How's a business plan going to how can you stick to a 2, 3, 5 year ideal? So just to go back, if I'd have planned to move within 4 years as a risk profile on the business, you wouldn't have been able to do it. But if you make the wrong decision, but like moving into new premises, you guys have moved into this place. It's every decision like that is a risk, and I think major decisions like that, when you're established business, can unfold the origami quite quick.
Well, that's why I asked, really, because at that point you've got something, haven't you? Whereas when you set up,
you've nothing.
You don't have it yet. So as much as it's the first step and might be seen as the biggest step, if it don't work, you didn't have it to start with, did you? So
You're 8 months in, 12
stuff
months
fails,
in.
doesn't it? It just does, like it does. But when you've got something and you
You've
don't
got
want to
more to
lose that
lose.
bit, yeah.
Yeah, the gamble's
I
higher.
can imagine that's tough. I mean, it's not something I've ever. I mean, obviously you can speak better than me on that about steps you kind of you've
Oh,
taken.
look, I think you used the phrase there, winging it. It's a phrase everyone could say. You start a business, you're winging it. But I think it's more being able to adapt to change and to what's going on in the industry. If you're manufacturing a certain vehicle, and all of a sudden there's a call in for not that one, but say a 3.5 ton, you're going to go, right, let's focus on this and change it. You're not winging it. You're adapting to the change of whatever that industry's called. And this industry changes a lot, doesn't it? You know.
Yeah, there's a lot of on vogue stuff that happens.
So I wouldn't say winging it, and same as us, I'd say you're seeing an opportunity and you're going with that. Because if you was just to stick to your business plan and go, we're going to do this, this, and this, and this, and everything's changing around you, well, that business doesn't succeed anymore because you're going to have no customers. That's how I see it. So winging it is a pretty loose term for actually what you're really doing.
Well, I think winging it's an honest term.
Yeah, it is.
I think from as a business
It's
owner,
easier to say winging it than saying I'm adapting to change.
Oh yeah, well it's just because it's just utter crap,
Yeah.
isn't it? You're not. What you're doing is you're doing what every other business does. I try and listen to when I started BTHS. I mean, there's a lot of history in the very start of it. In fact, before then, when I worked for other companies, one of the things I came from transport and logistics. I came from vehicle management and driving lorries and all that kind of stuff. I didn't really have a concept as to what was happening with traffic management or civils related companies. So, but I knew everything I needed to. I thought I knew everything I needed to know about vehicles and vehicle husbandry and looking after asset. I went out onto the network and onto the back of IPVs and tried to get a sympathy and understanding as to what was happening to those guys. You know, not just the guy who's buying it, but the guy who actually uses that vehicle on a day-to-day basis. And that helps you make those decisions. That helps you understand what the barriers are that the guys and girls on the roads are experiencing. You know, and how you can change that. If it means just moving a handle from 6 inches away on a vehicle on the body that we build that helps them get in and out or stops them from clouting their elbow on something, then you know that helps you then keep your ear to the ground as to what's happening. Jason, who and over 50% of the lads who work on my workshop floor, lads and girls who work on my workshop floor, have all been out onto the network. You know, I speak to our customers and say, do you mind if I send this guy or girl out and they can spend the night shift? So they get a comprehension as to what happens on the shop floor, as well as going and doing, you know, how many vehicles are you buying this year, and you know, what do you see the troubles are in the market going forward, and you know, all that there, because it can all be. People buy from people, and if you've got an understanding as to what that their day-to-day issue is in terms of how you can fulfil that from a product or a service that you provide, it just goes a long way.
It's funny when you were saying about starting in logistics and stuff. I was going to say to you, before you landed like in this industry, because obviously I've known you for a fair while, back before BTHS even existed.
Yep.
I was going to say, like, are you a bit of a lifer, or did you move from another sector?
Do you know how we first met? Can you remember how we first met? I will answer your question.
Was I there?
I feel like I'm under pressure now from my other half. You know, they ask you when your anniversary is, and you're like,
yeah, like
no,
Mr. and Mrs.
No, I don't remember how we first met. No, if I'm honest.
You know, it was in the Walkabout bar. You had an hour's worth of free bar, and I was working at that time
Behind the bar. It wasn't just an hour, Phil. It was a whole evening.
The only reason I'm not dipped into these sweets yet is because you've not told me the free. We met at the Walkabout bar. You guys had an hour's bar, I think.
More than an hour.
Was it more than an hour?
It would have been a whole evening of entertainment.
It was an hour.
You were there for an hour, weren't you?
I was smashed.
Oh.
No, I think we met before then. That was when I introduced you to Chris Hart.
Was that when you worked at CCRS?
Yeah, we did work then.
Was that your first Highways?
Role? Yeah, because we did something where you were CCRS, didn't we?
Yeah, a couple of little bits, I think. I don't
I
think
think one or two articles ago. It was
we
a
didn't
free.
work together all that in depth, but
It was a.
that's why I don't really remember how we met, because we didn't necessarily work together really closely from day one.
I think you pestered me at Trafex when I worked at CCRS. That was it.
That doesn't sound like a word I'd use, but that's fine.
You came up to me and went, "Hey up,
He always does that.
whip it under one arm and flat cap," and said,
Nothing's changed.
"Do you want some?
How is UK
Do you
next
want some
month?
internet
Watch what's
marketing?"
coming.
And I was like, "Yeah, all right, we'll do a bit of internet marketing." No, I think we did a couple of articles when it was at CCRS. Then I brought Chris Harton to went on board with you, didn't I?
Yeah.
Because that was when you did have the free bar. I introduced you to Chris Hart at the free bar, and I was really annoyed because I was smashed out my tree and he was drinking water rather than gin and tonics. You can keep that in. Bastard. I was smashed. Anyway, my first introduction into traffic management was as a fleet manager for CCRS. Prior to that, I worked in logistics, so to kind of really scrape it all the way back, I studied in college as a landscape gardener. I know.
Did you?
Yeah, genuinely, yeah. So I left school, went to a place called Myerscough College, which is up in Preston, or near Garstang in Preston. I studied as a landscaper, and then I moved to London as a placement to work for the Grosvenor Estate. So I worked for the Duke of Westminster I used to live in the Eaton Square, you know. Only in like it was an apartment that was the same size as this little room here. So I did working on the Duke of Westminster's gardens in Grosvenor and Belgravia. Belgravia and Westminster. And while I was there, and this is like 90s, the building trade fell on its arse. So all the builders, at the time, do you remember when I was having block paving driveways? No, you won't remember.
I was going to say, I didn't want to say it, but I'd have been a kid.
Old are you?
30s.
Fuck off, how old are you?
Well, I don't really disclose my age. I'm now 44.
Right, so you're the same age as me. Well,
I was born in 1980.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit older than you.
Okay.
But Tom,
Yes.
help me here,
Yeah.
because these are two useless.
Well, I remember
Can you
Yeah, I
remember?
do remember.
Everyone was digging up. It used to be crazy paving, which was all a load of smashed up flags, and then this is getting way away from the question that you asked me. And then they moved to block paving, and everyone was having block paved
Yeah,
driveways.
put their initials in it and stuff like that.
That's it. Yeah.
I do remember.
So when I was on work placement down in London, while I was at college and working for the Duke of Westminster, the building trade fell on its arse, and all the builders started to become landscapers. So they were all flagging and they were all doing block paving driveways. And I realised then that the industry I'd picked was a bit naff, and there wasn't a great deal of, unless you were going to be some kind of landscape architect or something like that, then being a landscaper or a hard landscaper wasn't really a career. For me, it didn't feel like it was going to be a long-term career. So I walked down to the King's Road and went into the Army recruitment office and signed up to the Army. So then I did the time in the Army, and when I came out of the Army, the only thing I really had was a driving licence, a HGV driving licence that was of any use in the civilian street. You know, anything that you learn in there or the equipment that you use in there is like 40 years out of date. So, you know, although I could do mechanics and welding and all that kind of stuff, it was useless to the civilian kind of industries because everything was turned to a computerised system by then. So coming out with just a driving licence, like most people coming out of the forces, I just went straight into wagon driving. Started wagon driving, then took my transport managing qualifications, so I could become a transport manager within logistics. At that point I was driving internationally, so I used to drive to like Turkey and North Africa and all sorts of places. Then moved into the office, and then moved from from like a planning role or assistant transport manager role to a transport manager to a fleet manager, and then that landed me at CCRS basically. And then
Rest is history.
The rest everybody else will know about. You know, CCRS, the two went to SHB Stroke Enterprise and Ackley, and then to start in BTHS.
Early days then, like how was that actually starting a business from?
That wasn't the same question you asked before that we cut.
I know, but I can't remember word for word.
You want to know? You want me to tell you about?
Yeah, we got to early days, starting a business. I've never done it. Mark's done it. You've done it. What was that like? Like, what resources did you have? How did that go? What are them very early days like when you go, right, I'm doing this now?
I think it's the jump from being employed by someone to being employed by yourself in a limited company capacity is a big jump, and not a lot of people, I don't think, can appreciate. You probably understand where I'm coming from with this, but not a lot of people can appreciate how that flip of the card is different. So if you underperform for a week in work or a month in work, you're still going to get a salary at the end of the day. Whereas when you work for yourself or you're starting a business where your monthly salary or your income, your household income is relative to the amount of success or output that you do in work, it changes your mindset really, really quickly. And I think you can either cope with that or you can't cope with that. So BTHS was formed by myself and Andy Dugan at the time. We were both discontent where we were at Ackley. Ackley had been taken over by SHB had bought Ackley, and then SHB was purchased by Enterprise. There was already a kind of we felt at the time disenfranchised because it was purposeful disillusion of Ackley Ackley's speciality within the industry, within the concept of SHB. You know, it was an acquisition. I kind of had a feeling at the time it was an acquisition to bolster the nest in preparation for a business sale, and you could kind of see that if you had that kind of acumen at the time. Anyway, me and Andy were getting further and further. Disheartened with the way it was going. We were losing our integrity and control over the way that we dealt with our customer bases. We each had individual customer bases, and inevitably they mixed as well. So we had some initial conversations with BritTip. BritTip, like I kind of said in a answering a question that you said to me previously. BritTip were a bodybuilder for Ackley, because Ackley don't build their own bodies. They still don't. They didn't then, and they don't now. They subcontracted that out to BritTip, so all their IPVs were built by them. Some of their 3.5 tons were built here, there, and everywhere. So the natural process for us then was to go and speak to BritTip to see if BritTip wanted to, you know, take me and Andy and us as a three-way, generate a new start business that was providing what we felt that we should be providing to the industry. We got the blessing, is that the right word? We got the understanding from the cushion supplier and the understanding from the light board supplier that if we were to do this, that they would supply the product to us, so we had the full product that we needed. And that's how we started, basically. So it was myself, Andy, and the guys at the directors at BritTip. Quite early on, there's a significant cash flow capital investment that needs to go into building vehicles like that before you start to seek a revenue in. I brought some orders to the table to start us as a business, but you can't then rely on sitting back a little bit. You've got to be active. You've got to go out. You've got to push. You've got to push. You've got to generate. You've got to generate. It's a bit like white gold. You know, you got to go out there and sell yourself. Go out there and sell the idea. And while I was kind of doing that, and Andy was trying to do that, there was also a conflict between us and Bricktip, because as a bodybuilder, what you tend to do is you build that body and you give that vehicle back to the manufacturer dealer, and then they deal with it. So you never see that vehicle again. Whereas in our industry, it's not like that. You provide a hire vehicle and you build and sell those vehicles at the same time. So you have that longevity of trying to keep that customer happy. So once that vehicle leaves your gate, that's not the end of your responsibility. You know, you've got to go and service the specialist equipment on the back of it. You've got to maintain it. You know, if it's on your hire fleet, you've got to make sure it's built right. So you're not building dead quick. You know, it's not a quick transactional process, which is what bodybuilding can be. And that created a conflict between the three parties. That it just wasn't. Me and Andy needed that longevity of customer care behind the product that we were providing, whereas Bricktip were quite happy at that point to just do the transactions and the transactions. This is my own opinion. So Andy left the business, I think within about 12 months, and he went back to Ackley, and then I purchased I'd won a couple of contracts at that stage. So the idea was that I would fulfill those contracts for the supplier, for our customer. So I stayed on with the idea of fulfilling those, which was a gentleman's agreement that I had with the customer. They knew what was happening. Then there was a few underhanded moves in between that process to try and take that customer away from BTHS and absorb it into Bricktip. And at that stage, I bought the remaining shares that were left in the business from Bricktip and carried on my own.
So when you started, did you just go, right, we're going to need an office, a facility like a small depot, or
No.
did you just go all and do that straight away, or was that a
No,
slow burner?
Me and Andy wanted to have a hire fleet at the same time as having sales direct to customers. Bricktip didn't want that, because Bricktip were building vehicles for hire companies, so that put them in for different hire companies like your Enterprises and your Northgates, and that put them in conflict with them customers, because they'd be seen to be entering into their market. So we didn't really necessarily need an office, because Andy was based like down this way. I think he was based in Bedford, whereas I was based up in Preston. So we kind of had the territorial control over what we needed to do. If we were meeting clients, we would meet them in a boardroom at Bricktip. Bricktip were building everything and installing everything. We also had Alex, who's now our technical director. He went to work direct. Part of the agreement when we started the business was that Alex would go and work directly for Bricktip, and then eventually would move over onto BTHS's book. That didn't kind of occur because he didn't necessarily get on that well with Bricktip, and he left prior to Andy Dugan leaving and me buying it out. So we never got the opportunity to be brought on. But they were doing the building for us anyway, so we didn't need a depot. We didn't need any kind of space at that point. And any kind of facilities like meeting facilities, we just did it there, or we'd hire a room.
Yeah.
It was only at the point that I bought out Bricktip when we needed an office, and then I rented a 2-desk office. It's probably about the same size as this little alcove we've got going here. And I think we were in there for 6 months, and then we got that first manufacturing unit, and then we started, because at that point we were having our bodies built somewhere else, and we were converting them in the car park of the office.
Yeah.
It was only temporary. It was always only going to be temporary like that. But we knew we needed a unit, so then we got our first unit, and then from there, the rest is kind of history, really.
Yeah, whilst it's more about what you can do, if you have someone come to see you and you're working out your car park, it's probably not what you want to show, is it?
No, but it needs must.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
When Andy left, in that position between Andy leaving and me buying out Bricktip, we were working out my living room. So I then, at that stage, Andy Casson had come working then for the company, and both me and Andy Casson were sat in my living room working we worked from 8:30 till 3:30. And the only reason we worked that time in my front living room is because my kids came in from school. My kids left at 8:30 to go to school, and they came back at 3:30. And we couldn't. I used to send my children upstairs into the bedrooms, immediately after school, and it just became untenable, really. And it's not fair on them. So then I took on a two-person office, and then from there it kind of escalated. But we had that two-person office. And then Alex would come. Alex at that point had his own business. When he'd left BritTip, started his own engineering business, and he was doing our vehicle light conversions and our livery in the car park of an office building like this, where we had 2 desks.
Was it daunting, or were there a point where you thought, oh, no, this ain't gonna work? Like, for example, you decide to make a move, you make a move, that initial setup of BTHS within a year doesn't look like how you'd kind of planned it, and now you're working out your living room. Like, is there a point there where you think, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be actually, or are you just doing it and going with it?
No, you live in the day. You live the day. So when the separation from BritTip occurred, it was acrimonious. It was like, I've been divorced twice. And it were like getting divorced. It were awful. There were moves and plays and all sorts of stuff that was going on. No one wants you in this industry. No, that's the wrong way of me putting it. No one wants you to compete with you in this industry. And I've had a lot, in those first 3 years, I've had a lot of contest, one to me and to BTHS. A lot of people have tried to stop it, a lot of people have tried to scupper it. That creates a determination that overcomes the daunting, oh, this isn't what I expected it to be. Because the amount, I don't want this to sound like I'm moaning in any way, shape or form, but the amount you beat someone, the more they want to, the more, some people will either shadow and disappear, and other people will go up against that and prove wrong. And I'm that one. I'd call it determined, but my wife would call it something else, but I don't want to give up. I just don't want to, you know what I mean? I want to prove that you know what you're capable of doing, you know what you're capable of creating. Just because somebody wants to stop you from doing that because they perceive you as a threat or they perceive you as being annoying or whatever, it doesn't, if you fold at that point and stop, you're never really going to progress in life or succeed. You know, there's all, so everything is daunting. Moving into that bigger unit, well, yeah, it was daunting, but you'll make it work.
What did you feel like you had that were like different then that would make it work?
Pig-headedness. Yeah, generally, yeah. Just, I'll make it work. You don't have anything different. It's a personality trait. That people will always tell you when you run a business or in life that you can't do something. But if you know in your heart of heart you can do it and you're capable of doing it, you'll do it. You're not necessarily trying to prove them wrong. You know, I don't sit there and go, no, I made it work. Despite you trying to do this or you trying to do that or you saying this or, you know, I've been called, you'll have to beat this bit probably, but I've been called a fat cunt on LinkedIn. You know, I've been told that I'm directly going against X, Y, Z and all sorts of stuff. And I don't let that be the driver of my ambition or my staging point to try to feel like I've succeeded at something. It's just another naysayer in the background. But naysayers would have stopped man from going to the moon. Do you know what I mean? Naysayers would have stopped the ability for women to vote. Naysayers would have stopped the German progression west. If you think you can do something, and you genuinely believe that you've got the ability to be able to do that, be that on your own or in a collaboration or with somebody else, and go for it and just do it. And that's my mental thought process is you can always achieve more, you can always do and achieve more than what you think you can do. The only thing that stops you from being able to do it is the mindset of giving up.
Quick name and shame moment. Who called Phil a fat cunt? I'm joking.
It's not what people say to you that drive you on, says the man who's lost 100 stone now and sits here as a gym rat.
I
Got nothing to do with it. It's got nothing to do with it.
No.
Seriously, who was it? I'm joking.
Yeah, but we can cover that bit. I mean, I'll not name drop that, but I mean, I think that's probably my weight loss is probably also a sign of a determination to do something and to change something about what was happening, because I was. There's a big thing about mental health going around, you know, and men's suicidal rates and stuff like that. But you know, and how that affects the world. It's like how that affects working environment and people at home. People who are overweight have a mental health problem. It's just not identified. And I had a problem, and I had a mental health issue that put me in a position where food was my self-medication. So it took me a while to get to a point where I realised that, and then and to identify with it. But you get to a point where you're the fattest person in the room. You know, I was 31 stone at my heaviest. Yeah, I know. And when you walk into a room and you're picking a seat that doesn't have arms in it, you know, you're walking into a restaurant and you're trying to pick a seat that you know is not going to collapse underneath you, that self-perpetuates more of that cycle of medicating yourself by food, because you're fat, so you might as well just continue to be fat. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. It doesn't matter being called fat cunt on LinkedIn. It doesn't matter about all the other jibes and stuff like that. It's more the fact that you're trying to manipulate and maneuver your way around life by being big, and you eat more, and you become accustomed to it. You know, you eat a chocolate bar, you'll eat 12 chocolate bars, or you'll eat a massive Cadbury's, or whatever it turns out to be. You'll just eat it.
Other brands are available.
Well, yeah.
And here's a picture
Not
of
an ad.
Phil from 4 years ago.
Not an ad.
No, so but and it was I wanted to change. I tell you how it came. So I slipped 2 discs in my back. I used to go to the gym regularly. Slipped 2 discs in my back, and then continued to eat the same amount of calories and food that I did do if I was going to the gym. But the gym was abating the weight going on because I had some form of physical activity at the time. Slipped 2 discs in my back. Took nigh on 2 years for me to get to a point of having my back operated on. In that time, my weight just shot up. My inactivity increased and the weight increased, and you just become immobile. You become too big. So then when I went to have my back operated on, my blood pressure was through the roof. I had a serious case of like white coat syndrome then. I didn't like. My mother died when I was very, very young in hospital, and I never liked going into hospitals or seeing doctors. I'd avoid it as much as I possibly could. So when I went to see the doctor for the spinal surgeon to get prepared for the surgery and so on and so forth, he basically said that he didn't think he could operate on me because I was too big. I think I was 28 stone at that point. And he had to get a fat anaesthetist in. So I quipped in this meeting, "Why, how big's this anaesthetist?" And he says, "Oh no, he's a guy that anaesthetise people that go in for bariatric surgery, because you need somebody who knows how to deal with the respiratory system of someone who's, for want of a better word, fat. because I was having back surgery. There's back surgery when they're doing the surgery. You're on your chest. You know, you're led down prone. So said fat anaesthetist, who's not fat, he was skinny as anything, but he just deals with fat people going through, or large terminology, large people going through surgery. He basically said to me, how old are your children? You'll not see your children leave school. If you carry on the way you are, I can tell you now, you won't see your kids leave school. My kids then were 7 and 10. And that was basically, yeah. So when he said that to me, I was like, my wife was next to me because I wouldn't go to a hospital on my own. I wouldn't even have blood taken in the hospital without my wife being right next to me holding my hand. I was terrible with it, absolutely awful. And I was like, shit. Okay, now I lost my mum when I was 11. So the pain that I went through, I didn't want to be responsible for putting that onto my children. Like I say, my eldest was 11, and my youngest, my middle child was 11, and my youngest was 7. And I just said to him, okay, fine. If you do this surgery for me, by the time I've gone through the physio process and stuff like that, I promise you that I will do everything. Not promising you, it's just what you said to me, but I promise you if you tick that box to say that you'll do the anaesthetic for me, for the surgeon, I give you my word that I will do absolutely everything that I can to lose the weight. And then I had the back surgery, recovered from the back surgery, spoke to the doctors about, trying to get some assistance in terms of weight loss and stuff like that. They put me on a weight loss program. They recommended I had weight loss surgery and stuff like that. And then COVID came around, and that was the time for me to lose the weight. So then when we came back from COVID and everyone was seeing everybody again, I could walk around all the shows and stuff like that because I'd lost 13 stone and no one could give a fucking idea who I was. It was brilliant. I quite literally walked into people, nodded at them, and walked on. It was only when I spoke that they realised it was me. I walked up to somebody who I used to work with for probably 18 months at Traffic, sat on his leg, and he didn't recognise who I was until I went, "All right, darling?" And then it was the voice, and he recognised who I was because I'd lost that much. The weight thing's important, I think, thinking about it. It wasn't that trigger. It wasn't someone calling me a fat cunt on LinkedIn. It wasn't that at all. It was my children that was the trigger for me to lose the weight.
You find it helps you at work?
People look at you differently. Let me put it that way. First thing you said to me when I walked in through the door.
Sorry about that. yeah, I know. But it's amazing.
But it's complimentary.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Whereas if you're, I lost 13 stone in just over 12 months, which has other medical complications to it. Supplement based and gallbladder and kidney stones, everything. Nature punishes you for putting too much on, and it also punishes you for taking too much off. But walking into a room, there'll be people out there or people that will listen or watch this, and they'll recognise this, and it might not be down to weight, but walking into a room and being the fattest person in that room isn't a nice feeling. Walking around a trade show, being the fattest one wobbling around a trade show is not a nice feeling. And when you're big as a person, or you have a natural trait to become large, people will feed you. You are the dustbin. And it's if you go to a restaurant full of, you go to a restaurant with people on the table, if people don't finish that food, they always hand that food over to the fat person. Yeah, Phil will finish it. And you feel obliged to finish it.
No way.
You do, yeah, but you don't realise it. I do it. I don't, and I still do it now. Being hyper aware of it, I still do it. If I can't finish anything, I offer it to Jason.
There we go.
No, but you do. But so, like I touched on it a minute ago, but you walk into, you can't fit on a plane seat. I mean, I'm 6'4", you're taller than me.
Yeah.
It's difficult enough to get into a plane seat as it is. When you've got extra girth and it's just even worse. I'm broad anyway. Doctor's waiting room, you can't pick a seat with arms in it because you might be able to get in it, but walking down the corridor to the doctor's room with a chair stuck to your arse is quite embarrassing. You know, I've sat in a cafe before and the chair's nigh on collapsed on me, and all those things are obstacles that you have when you walk into a room in the same way a policeman might walk into, you know, a house is going to arrest someone and do a risk assessment, you know, a dynamic risk assessment. You do the same thing as a large person when you walk into a room because you're trying to work out where you can sit. And that's bad. You know, it's awful. Or booth tables, you know, in like a Harvester or something like that, where they have them fixed seats and booths and you can't get in between the table and the chair. And when the meet and greeter says, would you like this table here? You can't say, well, not really, because I'm too fat to get in the gap.
But what your mindset has done is you've recognised you're obviously very determined when you set your heart to something you're doing it, and you recognise that obviously you put on a lot of weight, partly because probably the majority was down to having the operation and not being able to move, and like you said, the balance is there, but you've seen that you need to lose the weight. Again, you want to start a business that's going to work. Obviously your mindset, you're probably a go-to person of saying, I believe in this, I don't want to do it. And that's probably how or why you're saying that when you started BTHS, and Matt asked you the question earlier, what was the driver, what made you think it was going to work? And you said, well, because you thought it was just,
yeah,
the more it would work. But that's obviously the mindset, you believe in something.
Yeah, and the more and more obstacles you are put in front of you, the more and more determined you become to overcome them. But I mean, there's some obstacles you just can't overcome, and there are some things and certain things that have happened in the last 5 years where I've kind of gone, you've took that as far as you can possibly possibly do it. I mean, I've said this before, that I'm one of those people that, one, I lead from the front as a boss and as an owner and a manager of people. Owner of people, that sounds wrong. And as an owner of a business and a manager of people. I haven't got slaves.
Yeah, well done.
Well
qualified, yeah.
But I lead from the front because I think that's imperative to be able to do that and to be able to show that you can do that. But that also, the determination and the leading from the front go hand in hand, but you also need to be able to identify when you're flogging a dead horse, because you can become not hard-minded, what's the word I'm looking at, single-minded, and egotistical about making it work. But one of the things that generates, or a byproduct of that is, when you combine those two and you display those two to the people that you work with or who work for you, they'll die to try and do the job that they.
Well, that's the thing. That's when you're saying you're trying to flog a dead horse. That's when you go to adapting to change.
Yeah, you just have to be. You've got to be dynamic at the same time as being determined. You know, so a river's not straight, is it? It doesn't go from the mountain straight to the sea. It takes a route, and then over a period of time, it will change that route. And it's the same sort of thing. You know, you still want to get from the mountain to the sea, but you might have to go a little bit longer to get there, and then you can cut the corners as you become more established. Which is what we do, really. Everyone will do it. You just don't. It depends on what analogy you want to slide running a business into. I don't know. I'd never run a business before I did that. Never. And I've got a good team around me now, you know, and you need that, because one of the things I did realise really, really soon was as the owner and the manager of the business, the managing director of a business, you're at the top of a flagpole and everyone's shouting up at you because they want something, you know, and you are the target of everyone's attention or everyone's problem, and you need to be able to answer lots of different questions about lots of different topics. But you might not really know.
In lots of different ways, because you've got lots of different characters.
Yeah, if it's not, you might be an accountant asking you questions about X, Y, Z. It might be, your refuse supplier asking you what type grade or how much of this, or, it might be somebody on the shop floor asking you about when you last ordered some M12, 16 mil, whatever. and you've got to do all of that. Or, you know, it might be the marketing company that you use asking you, why can't you clear out your picture file on your share drive? You know, it could be all of it. Yeah, but it is. You know, I'm working on a website with you know, in the background, and you've got to wear many different hats, and all in the same day.
I heard that the marketing company have to wear different hats talking to BGHS, don't they?
Whoa.
He says, what film are we going to get today? He doesn't. But seriously.
Really?
No, he's done with it, isn't he?
Nah.
No,
I'm not about it.
No, I'm nice about you.
I think I'm like everybody. I'm like Marmite, mate. But you know where you are, and this is not only externally to customers and suppliers. You know, you guys are suppliers to us. I think you know where you stand. We've worked together in a capacity now for quite a long period of time, and I have that element where you know my this sounds really pretentious, but you know my expectation and what is right and what works for me. That's why we don't end up editing videos forever and a day, because we did do on the first round, but once you guys know what I need or what my expectation is, it flows dead easy. Now that can come across as being a bit crass, or it can come across as being a bit too forward when you're having those interactions with people, but a spade's a spade with me, and you know where I am, and you know how I feel, and you know what I want, and you know, and likewise, you know, I speak my mind quite a lot, but it's not to be deliberately abrasive. It's just I ain't got time. I'm not going to mollycoddle, or you know, if I don't like that, I don't like it. But you know where you are. It doesn't mean I've fallen out with you. It doesn't mean I don't like you. It just that's not for me. You know, let's move on. And I do that with in the working environment. You know, the guys if you ever interviewed the guys, apart from me being probably the biggest arsehole they've ever worked for, they know exactly where they stand. If we have a conflict in work, it's done and dealt with. I mean, Jason's just sat here. You know, and he'll testify to that. You know, if something goes wrong, I'll say my piece with you. Well, you know, you can say your piece with me, and we move on. We learn, we move on, and that's from speaking your mind, really, and being forward.
That's a couple of things there, though, like that leadership style of like from the front, self-proclaimed might be the biggest arsehole you've ever worked for. Them two things don't seem to go together. So like, do you have like a style? Do you know what I mean? Like as a leader, all of a sudden you've gone from starting your own business, employing people, you've got to lead those people, other than speaking your mind and, you know, leading from the front, being willing to do what you're asking of others, I guess. Is it as simple as that? That's
yeah, well, you just answered.
Is that it? Do you know what I mean? Is that it to lead that team?
Not one leadership style suits everything and everybody, because people are different. Yes, I think I don't treat anybody any differently, and when it comes to my leadership, I never. If we were having this conversation in the car on the way down, I never ask anybody to do something that I'm not willing or prepared to do myself. Now that might not mean, you know, everybody's job within our business I can do or have a capacity to do. I might not be able to do it as well as all of them, but I can do it, and I'd be more than happy to do it. That's my leadership style. Don't ask somebody to do something that you're not prepared to. So even if it's changing urinal blocks in the bog, whatever, you've got to be willing and able to do it yourself. And I go on the shop floor, and I do work on the shop floor with the guys, you know, if they come behind stuff, and I'll do that, and I'll stand side by side with them, and you know, if it's a Saturday morning or something like that, we're having to do a bit of overtime, I'm there in there with them, because why shouldn't I be?
Well, I've been with you before, and you've proudly pointed out a bit of your welding on a vehicle as we've walked about or filmed bits or done bits?
With that, Matt, I'm fortunate because I can do that. But as in, I'm all right at that job. There's many people out there that can always do a job. Somebody can run BTHS a lot better than I can run it. And I could probably do a different job a lot better than somebody else could do it. And I've got people on my shop floor that are far more skilled as craftsmen to be able to do something that better than I can do it. But to be able to stand there and still do that with them means a lot. But it also helps you then to identify what their day-to-day troubles might be. So even if you do a week on the shop floor or a week doing somebody else's job, you can then see what their obstacles are that are insignificant to you as a managing director in terms of your day-to-day stuff, but have an adverse effect on how they can do their job. That's my leadership style. I'm there with you, doing that with you and next to you. Yeah, I might delegate a lot of stuff now, a lot more than I did do before, but I'd never delegate anything that I wouldn't be prepared to do myself. Leading from the front. However, it does have a big downside because you expect everybody to be invested in the same way that you are.
I guess that would probably loop back round to like your share scheme, for example, doesn't it? It's like a way to bridge that then. Like if you want people as invested as you, like you are the owner, you're naturally going to be more invested than they are, like you just are. But bringing in things like that share scheme is almost a way to bridge that gap and make sure that like you as a collective are the owners. Granted, your share might be a little bit more than their share, but that's like an action point, isn't it, to try and raise that level of care and investment?
Yeah, but it's not used. The share scheme is not used as a stick. The share scheme is used as a potential for a financial benefit for the guys who work for the business. It's not used as a stick to say you need to work as hard as I own 90%, you own 1%. You need to work at least 1% harder than everybody else who doesn't own 1%. It's not kind of used like that because you'll always, the issue with leading in a way of do as I do is you will always be, as the owner of the business, you will always be the person that will do 3 days straight without an hour of sleep. You'll always be the person that sat there, puts the kids to bed, and you're still working on your emails till 1 o'clock in the morning. Nobody else, you can't expect anybody else to do that, and it's very difficult not to blur that line to expect somebody else to do it because you kind of subconsciously do. If it's 7 o'clock in the afternoon and you're in the evening and you're ringing someone from work to say, have you spoke to these or have you emailed these? You've kind of crossed that line of it. You're invading into someone's personal life or their private life at that point, and it's very easy to do that. And it's very, when you're prepared to do it yourself and you expect other people to come along on that journey with you, you have to be kind of careful.
So are you now 7 years in?
No, we're 2018, so what are we now, 2024?
Six coming
years.
up, 7 in May or whatever it is next year.
Yeah.
How's the industry changed in that time? Because the business has obviously grown, but how has the industry changed? Because
well, it seems like someone's buying everybody at the minute, doesn't it?
There's been bits and pieces around adapting. What have you had to adapt to? What's changed that's constantly meant that you've had to keep an eye on that?
Our product range has changed. So we try not to be a one-trick pony within the traffic management sector. So we have we have blue light products, we have ambulances, and not ambulances, but response cars and stuff like that we do. And that's just to make sure that we're not caught in as the tail end of any kind of peaks or troughs within highway sectors. So one of the things that I wanted to make sure was that we weren't stuck in that. And it's too much of a risk for us to have a large amount of our income coming just from one industry. So we've adapted into, we do mountain rescue vehicles, which you guys came and filmed when we donated that vehicle. That's generated other work that we do in that sector. Same for the police vehicles and the same for the ambulance response ones. Airside vehicles, that go on the airport and stuff like that. So they're all kind of how we've ring-fenced our income from, not away from traffic management, just to make sure that we've got some kind of other nuclear going on there. Because the industry has changed, we've got the biggest one's the electric one, which we spoke about a couple of years ago. When
Yeah,
we
we're
did
going
that
to come to that.
And the contractual changes within the industry reflect on people's expenditure within vehicles. So if they're winning a new contract or there's a new contract up for tender, then you'll see an increase in demand for vehicles. But that then runs in cycles. So, where they're changing them, contracts were 3 years and now they're 10 years, that has an adverse effect on the churn of old vehicles and the new vehicles. And we have to kind of prepare for that a little bit more. We've brought new products in. We brought the Sanyong Musso was one that we brought into. It sounds big, I did that. We didn't bring it into the market, but we were the first ones really to start pushing that product forward into the market, and now everyone seems to have one. And it's about finding those little individual kind of vehicle types or vehicle conversions that we think would do quite well for the industry, and trying to stay a step ahead. As you know, we're building something at the minute which will be, I don't know when this goes out, but which will be at the show next month. It's the first to the UK. Well, I think we're the first conversion company to do one. And it's about trying to stay ahead of that, really. Listening to our customers is the other one, because they tell us straight out the bat whether, if we got 4 customers saying no, things aren't great at the minute, then we need to adapt either our hire fleet or our build program to make sure that we reflect in what's potentially 6 or 12 months down the line.
Yeah. When you said about the electric stuff, we spoke about it for a little bit last time. Did that turn out as you thought? Like, has it gone?
No. The government's not helped with that, because there's 2 distinct differences in the move from ICE cars or internal combustion engines to electric or hybrid or alternative fuel. You've got the passenger car market, and then you've got the van market and the commercial market. They're both different. They've both got different timescales in how and when they're supposed to be moving over, and they have a percentile change from units sold per year. 10, 20, 30%, it's got to be electric, so on and so forth. The government came out saying that they're moving the car market date back. The European element, which is where all our vehicles are built, and on the LCV and the HGV side, completely different. It's still the same, but what that does is that puts a reluctance block in people's purchasing appetites, because they don't necessarily want to buy an electric vehicle now because they've been told it's 2035 rather than 2030, but the LCV market hasn't changed. So where we're trying to say to people, get in there now, start operating 1 or 2 of these vehicles in electric, get used to how you need to operate and how you need to change your operation now before it's enforced upon you. Then it's 10 years down the line now, or it's 5 years down the line now. But it's not, because it's an aggregate, it's a percentage increase year on year on year on year on year. The manufacturers are forced into a position by the government and the EU government where X% of what they produce has to be either electric, hydrogen, or whatever it turns out to be. So while there's a lag-in requirement from the market, there's going to be an influx of product produced that's going ahead of the perceived curve of where it needs to be. But it's not kicked off. It's not hit off on the market.
So where do you sit in that? Do you sort of ramp up production so you're ready when everyone else... It's human nature, and it do something when you need to, and all of a sudden there might be a right, okay, we need these now. Do you produce and have them for when people eventually come, or do you hang off and
You can't.
and wait with everyone?
So the way our model works on let's just stick on the diesels for a minute, is I go to market about 2 years before and I buy the chassis that we need for the following year. So I buy out X percentage of production capacity within our workshop. So let's say I can build 10 3.5 ton vehicles from front to back in a week. I'll go out and buy enough vehicles to create to generate 7 vehicles a week to allow for additional stock to come in. You can't do that with electric, because with the diesel engines at the minute on the 3.5 ton market, I know that there's an output for them all the way down that line. Whereas with the electric vehicles, because there's no surety and there's all this inconsistency coming from the government in terms of what they are actually going to do with the move over from diesel to electric or hybrid, I can't buy that many vehicles up in because I'll just end up with a car parking yard full of electric vehicles until everyone goes, we need them, or we've got to win this contract we need X percent of alternative fuel vehicles, right, let's buy 20. I've got to sit on that stock, and it's just not viable. So we've tried, all my staff cars in work are electric, so we all have Polestars. So all my sales guys and stuff like that are driving around in Polestars. That's our kind of tick mark for us as a business. We've got Polestars, again, electric vehicle on the fleet in terms of the hire fleet. We have more electric vehicles coming this year, back end of this year and beginning of next year, to go onto the hire fleet. We got a big electric vehicle coming this year. It's the gap, the 3.5 ton gap is the problem. It's the problem for people to want to take them in terms of hire them and buy them, but it's also a problem in terms of the operational usability on them as well, because the mileage isn't necessarily where people expect it to be.
That was going to be my question. We've seen you've had the Polestars and the Ford electric, which is a 3.5 ton, was it?
3.5 ton. Yeah.
What do you think to that as a vehicle going forward? Are we there? Are they there with the tech yet? Are the ranges too short?
The 3.5 ton market is very, very tricky for an electric vehicle, because one, you've got the weight issue in terms of a curb weight, which is the vehicle built weight with no weight on it, is far in excess of what a normal 3.5 tonner would be. So they put a derogation in to allow you to go up in terms of maximum weight capacity. But the government then kindly handed another kind of bit of ticker tape on that one, which was, if your drivers are going to be driving a vehicle over 3.5 ton weight that's an alternative fuel vehicle, they need an additional CPC qualification on the license. So nothing simple. Then you've got the manufacturing element of it, where they're just not doing the amount of miles that people expect them to do. So on our hire fleet, and most hire companies allow, say, 30,000 miles per year on a van, which equates to 570, call it 550 miles a week. An electric vehicle will give or take 90 to 140 miles in a day. So when you say, well, if I said to you it'll do 140 miles in a day, and you'll go, well, that range ain't good enough. You go, well, you're hiring this vehicle off me at 30,000 miles a year, which is 550 miles a week. The guys are only working 5 days.
Yeah, so they're not getting it.
It's that block is the anxiety over range, when there is an anxiety there. If you're driving, say, from Preston to here, you're gonna have to tank it up at least once.
When we last spoke, when you turned 5,
The business turned 5. Clarify that.
yeah. electric vehicles and how that market will develop was kind of the big prediction, shall we say. Where do you stand on that now? What's like the next prediction for this market and how you might have to adapt to it?
In terms of the change of fuel usage, or just prediction?
Or product demand, or how you might have to pivot on what you're doing based on, like you said before, about, you know, government being a big factor at the minute in certain elements of how you have to operate.
I think there's been people are swinging on the heels at the minute in terms of what's the next. You know, you got a cone lane, you got two cone lane machines that are doing their thing. You've got these LMCC things, EMCC things that seem to be doing their thing. There's lots of things going on, but none of it, my opinion is of it, and from when I speak to people outside of those immediate decision making kind of spheres, there's nothing. I've got to be careful how I put this. I'm not gonna. If somebody wants me to build one of those things, I'll build, or us to build one of those things, we'll build one of them. But I'm not gonna I'm not in that position to be able to start ploughing loads and loads. I don't want to put a load of money and effort behind those, because I just don't necessarily see them where some people see them at the minute. But those attempts at forms of innovation then generate side avenues for us, or side avenues to, you know, or potential mediums between those two kind of innovations that you could potentially do. I don't think anybody knows what the government's doing in relation to road and infrastructure, because whatever's said is completely different. You know, it's the minute it leaves their mouth before a full stop is put on it, it's changed. So it's very difficult to kind of predict what the next flow would be, what the next innovation needs to be, what the next infrastructure spend's going to be. So we're already diversified into emergency service vehicles and civils vehicles and stuff like that, and like I said, airside stuff and things like that. And we're not going to lose our core of who we are as a business. You know, we started in TM, and we'll always be in TM, and we'll always be in civils, and, you know, and telecommunication supplies and stuff like that. We'll never lose that, but we're not going to be, as a business, we're not going to put too much more additional investment on top of what we would normally do, because it's unpredictable. Like I said, we've had people experiencing difficulties in paying for the rental fleet currently, because somewhere in that link between a Highways England job or a local government job going out down to the person who we hire the vehicle to, there's a non-payment somewhere, and it's not right. And for us to kind of put all our eggs in that basket, with diversifying, I think, is where I see things going forward. After electric vehicles, I think you're going to end up with no human driving in any way, shape or form. I think that we're not that far away from that. I'd probably say by 2040, 2045, there'll be a considerable amount of autonomous vehicles on the road anyway.
Well, we had something on the website, didn't we, the other week, from a cab in San Francisco, autonomous taxi, and the video inside is just a passenger filming, and it's just going about its business. I mean, I know it's not the same, but that's a service industry, isn't it? That's not I guess it is a commuter car, but you know what I mean, in that context, that's a service industry already using autonomous vehicles.
Yeah, I think the difference, say, you're not just removing a driver. If you, let's say, take a 3.5 ton van, you know, setting out 2-way, 3-way, 4-way traffic lights. You're not just removing a driver at that point, you're also removing the person that sets that site up. So I don't think that would necessarily be the big thing in 3.5 ton vehicles that are working on street works, because you still need that human element to set up. But what it will do is it will have a technology effect on all the other vehicles and peripheral vehicles around it that will see a change in a shift in play. Because the more the human interaction is removed from vehicle movement, the more Chapter 8 is going to have to adapt. You know, the TSRGG is going to have to. You know, there'll be. I think that there'll be. I mean, Teslas can already do it to a certain degree, can't they? I mean, the Polestars can drive more. You know, if you're most modern cars now with lane departure assist and stuff like that, you're nearly there. You're 80% there. So I think that's probably. There'll still be a requirement to build a vehicle. There'll still be a requirement to build a large 18-ton or 32 or 44-ton vehicle. But I think that AI stroke intelligent driving or you know, humanless driving vehicles will probably be. As for alternative fuels, I don't know. Realistically, I think hydrogen is the most appropriate for a HCV vehicle in hydrogen cell form. I think that's going to be the more long-term removal of fossil fuel into hydrogen, whereas anything, say, sub 3.5 ton MGV will end up being electric. So your car derived van, like a little Ford Fiesta van or something like that, will be electric, whereas the rest of it will probably, anything above that and that has to carry any kind of capacity, will end up being hydrogen.
What do you do away from work to relax?
Why are you smiling at me?
I'm
Is that because you preluded this question and you don't want me to reply with the original answer?
No. I just find it interesting. Obviously, like you run a business. Do you get much downtime?
What do you think I do out of work?
Well, I know you play golf.
There you go.
Well, that works well, doesn't it?
No,
Okay.
He already knows.
Plays golf.
He already knows him. Do you get much downtime away from work?
No, is the honest answer. It merges very much into one. So, I think I said when I came here, I got a phone call at 5:45 this morning, and you know they'll carry on going through till 9 o'clock this evening. And it's the same at the weekend. So I try to dedicate time to my family and my girls. So, as you know, I've got 2 young daughters. And I try and spend as much time with them as I possibly can, but also try and spend some time with myself. So playing golf of the weekend, it's difficult to unwind 100% from what you do. You know, if I go away on holiday, it takes me about 3 days to completely switch off from work. And it's the same with a weekend, really, or with an evening. My wife, as you know, Catherine, she works in a company. So one thing we try and do of an evening is the point at which we're both in and we're sat down for tea. That's a cut-off then, and unless we have to, we don't talk about work, because you can end up having a whole dinner conversation over dinner about what's occurred, you know, who's done this or who's done that, or so on and so forth. And before you know it, the kids are going to bed at like 8 o'clock, 8:30, and you've not even spoken to them. You know, you're not asked them what they've done in school and stuff like that. So I try and spend as much time with my wife and my children that I possibly can. I play golf, play guitar. You know, we go, I think this weekend, I took the girls to Alton Park to watch some British superbike racing. Sometimes we'll go and watch Chris Hart race his cars. Just anything really. My main passion, I suppose, is golf, anything that's free. Golf. Golf days, you know, trips in Portugal, golf days, that sort of stuff. No.
Just make a quick note.
Free golf tickets. Golf, football, Formula 1. You know, if I can find 4 hours to watch, or 2 hours to watch the Formula One around in circles. You know, my girls will watch that with me sometimes. You know, I just spend it with my family, and just try and switch off from work as much as I can. And I'm handing a lot of my kind of day-to-day responsibilities down the line a little bit. You know, I'm slowly removing myself from the commercial and the day-to-day commercial and operational stuff to be able to allow me that weekend and that evening time.
Do you find that hard, pulling back and letting someone else do it?
It's taken me a long time to be able to get to a point where I've found someone I trust. It took me 5 years. So I took a holiday 3 weeks ago, and it's the first time I've taken a holiday outside of Christmas and not felt, shit, something's gonna go wrong. And that's not me being a control freak, that's me not finding the right people in the business to be able to take those reins while I'm away. And it is difficult to, when we said before, you know, about moving into a new premise, one decision you make can actually can pull the whole house of cards down very, very quickly. It's the same thing when you're away and you kind of entrust that person or those people not to make a wrong decision that will bring the whole, just ordering. You could order something and before you know it, with no cash flow to do X, Y, Z, and bang, you're in. You're going backwards. So it can be quite difficult. But I've got to let go of that as well. You know, I have to entrust some people to be able to make some decisions and have that autonomy to make those decisions, and be there to guide them in making those decisions, and if necessary help if those decisions turn out to be wrong.
So last thing probably is this. I think this might end up being a bit of a continued theme to end on, but we call this podcast The Extra Mile. What does that mean to you in a business sense? What does going the extra mile mean to you?
For BTHS or for me?
To you?
Never failing to do what I say I'm going to do. That doesn't sound in context that you're going the extra mile, but in today's society, a lot of people or businesses will say or do something, or say or sell something that isn't necessarily what you expect it to be, or there could be a differentiation between your expectation and what you've been told. We don't do that. We've never done that. We'll do everything that we say we're going to do. And if we can't do it, we'll die trying to do it. And that to me is going that extra, because it's cliche, isn't it, going the extra mile? In a business sense, you can put it in with all the other kind of business acronyms and business cliches, but going the extra mile is for us as a business, is making sure that we say we're going to do what we're going to do. We listen to you, we do what we're going to say we're going to do, and if not, you can guarantee that we'll fall on our knees by trying to actually do what we said we were going to do.
Nice.
It depends. If you come into work on a Monday and everyone's on their knees, you're thinking, shit, what are we trying to do? But then when they all start going like that, you know you're doing the right job.
We'll leave it there then.
Yep.